Did you know that Uncluttered and Unfiltered is a passion project created to reach and connect a community of women over 50? Growing production and promotion costs can be a challenge, and your support means the world. When you join our Patreon bonus club, you'll have access to a ton of otherwise unavailable video content, plus commercial-free episodes and a private chat community where Christine and I will answer any questions about the upcoming series, Organizing Eden, which is really for all of us. Plus, we have a few surprises as well coming your way. For just $5 a month, you'll be helping us grow this incredible sisterhood. And if that's not possible, hey, we get it. Truly, the most incredible way you can support us is just by telling one friend about Uncluttered and Unfiltered. And thank you. We love that you're here.
Welcome to Uncluttered and Unfiltered, the podcast urging you to let it go and don't look back. With nationally acclaimed professional organizer Christine Stone and self-proclaimed hot damn mess radio and TV personality Eden Kendall.
Welcome back to Uncluttered and Unfiltered. I'm Eden Kendall.
And I am Christine Stone.
Christine is a professional organizer. I am a amateur mess, but I am proud of that because we are so different from each other. One thing we do have in common, though, we are both women over 50.
Yes, we are.
And we have really loved the community that has been built through this podcast. So thank you, everybody, for being a part of everything that we do. Now, do you remember, Christine, a book from, I don't know, was it the 80s?
It was the Oprah era.
The Oprah era called Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus.
Yes, I remember it well.
It really caused such an uproar at the time because it was the first time somebody really dug in and said, women and men do things differently. We process things differently. And that is why sometimes we have conflict. Well, imagine a female writing a book that has that kind of a premise, but delves so much deeper. And that is the book we're talking about today, Think Like a Girl. And we're speaking with the author of that book, Dr. Tracy Packiam. She is a psychological expert in a lot of things. Memory is one of her expertise she's written books about. But most recently, the book that she has really garnered a lot of attention for is Think Like a Girl, 10 unique strengths of a woman's brain and how to make them work for you. So I think we all want that. Why did you write this book?
I appreciate you asking that, Eden. You know, as a researcher, I kept noticing you have these scientific findings about how the brain works, but it always felt like one size fits all. It was a very broad brushstroke about, oh, your brain does this, and this is linked to depression or happiness or risk-taking. And I began to recognize that there were a lot more nuances about the female brain that perhaps we're not acknowledging or identifying or even applying to our own lives. And so really that was the motivation for me as a female researcher wanting to write this book so that I could unpack and understand really how our brain works, be able to accept and acknowledge that, but ultimately to be able to, as you said, harness or apply that for, to maximize our own strengths.
That sounds like a researcher's manual, something that maybe is very academic. It's a black book with white bold lettering and hot pink lettering embellishing it. It looks like your favorite beach read.
It was such an easy read. Easy read.
Easy read. It's fun to read. It has the truths and the myths highlighted in the sides of the pages.
Which I loved. That was a favorite.
It's just a delightful read. What chapter, Christine, spoke to you the most?
Well, I love the whole book, but I have to tell you the bonding brain. And the reason why is because I had posted a question on our Facebook ladies group. How do you think your childhood affects your adult life that you are living now? And the response was overwhelming and kind of what I expected it to be. And so when you see and hear as a truth, early childhood attachments can make a big impact on adult romantic relationships for both men and women. This whole chapter seems to be exactly that. It's what happened in your childhood to in the relationships you have now, in the friendships you have now, in the job you have now, no matter what it is, somehow something that either it could have been a happy thing that happened in your childhood, but it definitely reflects and I'm 60, she's over 50, and I still think it never goes away. It's just how you deal with it as an adult.
Yeah, that's so true. And I really appreciate you bringing that up. For me, what's an exciting thing to know as a psychologist is that it's not deterministic. It's informative. So I feel like that self-awareness is really important and really critical. So you might, and I'm a licensed psychologist, so I sometimes have clients that'll say, why do I find myself attracted to the same person? Or why do I fall in the same pattern? It's negative. It's unhealthy. I don't feel good. And a lot of that could be rooted in our childhood patterns that we see mirrored, and then we play out. In part because our brain is wired because we almost want to fix something that we perceive as broken. Not that it is, but in our brains, we perceive it as, hey, if I can repeat this pattern, then I can go back, change that, fix it, and then go on a healthier path. But that's not always the healthy approach. And I think that awareness, that understanding is a very important first step. So if you know, I had this kind of dynamic with my parents, my caregivers, even my siblings, and this is kind of laying the foundation for my current friendships, my current romantic relationships, that can be really powerful insight. And then you can make a decision. Is this a healthy decision for me? Do I want to pivot and find a more healthy expression of bonding, as you put it, Christine?
I loved that. I really, that chapter spoke to me.
I think everybody has that cliche in mind where you see somebody laying on a couch in a psychologist's office and they say, tell me about your childhood.
Yes.
Well, why would they do that? Well, because it is important information, isn't it, when you're trying to figure out about patterns and things like that. Now, women, do we approach just right out of the gate? Do we approach a relationship differently? For example, let's go with friendships, because I feel like if we start talking about romance, that's a whole thing in and of itself. But let's say friendships. When we meet somebody, are we sizing them up in a different way than maybe a man who meets another man does?
I think that's such an important question, and I think there's a lot of research to suggest that women tend to form female friendships on a nurturing basis. And if you think of our stress response as women, it's what psychologists call tend and befriend. So we move away from the fight or flight. We tend not to use that approach, but we want to be socially connected. So in those moments of stress, you may notice that the first thing you want to do is pick up your phone, text someone, call someone, maybe even be on social media, not because you're avoiding the stress, but because you feel like by being on social media, on some low level, you're able to connect. And so just recognizing that pattern, that we seek female friendships as a moment to connect because it nourishes us. And also it gives us an opportunity to express a sense of nurturing. And so knowing that can also help you evaluate what friendships are positive versus what are maybe less positive in your life.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say, because even in friendships, you can have a group of friends that actually cause stress, anxiety, sadness, insecurity. And so to me, recognizing that and saying, I don't want to repeat this, even in a friendship, and trying to have friends who make you feel better about yourself and make you feel good when you're with them.
Yes, and I think an important thing to keep in mind is, again, this is a generalization, but there is a strong cultural and social aspect, is that women tend to be raised, maybe less so now, but certainly, when I was growing up, to be a people pleaser. And so we also tend to seek friendships and continue and maintain friendships on that basis. We feel we can't let someone else down because it's a failing on our part. And again, that's something to be aware of as a person, male or female, and to recognize is that people pleasing now becoming unhealthy for you because you're wearing yourself thin as a result of saying yes all the time.
Yes, I agree with that too.
The people pleasing. The people pleasing. I think on some level, almost everybody I know has a degree of that, unless they are just so comfortable in their own skin and they just know what's right for them. Also from that chapter, though, let's talk about hugs. Can we talk about hugs? Because we got a big kick out of that.
This was like an aha moment for me when I read this. I thought this was fantastic, only because I'm not a big hugger. And so now I'm fascinated by this, and it's almost like a challenge.
So Tracy, why don't you tell us what you say in this book about hugs, how many, how long they should last?
Right.
So this is fascinating because Christine, like you, I'm not a big hugger. I like hugging people who are close to me, but I'm not a hug a stranger person.
Right.
And so when I was, reading over the research for this book, it was fascinating to know that a 20-second hug was enough to release oxytocin, which is a bonding hormone. And it is the very first hormone that we experience when we're born. It's released between the mother and the infant. So it's a really powerful connection. And just to know that 20 seconds of a hug can simulate that same exact bonding feeling. What I found was even more fascinating was another piece of research to show that when someone was hugging a pillow, like one of those curved pillows shaped like a person, they also showed similar levels of oxytocin and lower levels of stress or cortisol, simply by that hugging mechanism. And so again, if you as a listener are not a hugger as a person, at least find a pillow and hug it out. Maybe when you're talking about something stressful, hug a pillow when you're doing that.
I think this is a great idea. And also, I mean, you don't realize how long 20 seconds is until you start to look at your phone or whatever and do 20. It's long. And so this should be very interesting.
I'm laughing to myself because no matter what the argument that arises in our household is, my husband always tells everyone to hug it out. All right, you two just hug it out, whether I'm arguing with my son or my daughter, or they're fighting with each other. And I think, wow, I guess there is science behind that. But man, there are a lot of physical things you can do that can alter the way you think. Now, whether or not this is different for a man or a woman isn't necessarily what I'm leaning towards with this question. But when would it be a smart idea to stick your hand in a bucket of ice? Because as somebody who hates being cold, just the idea of like submerging my hand in ice, I can't wrap my brain around it. But then again, that's why you suggest it for what? Decisions? Is that where we're supposed to do that?
That's right. So in my lab, I wanted to explore how we make decisions, specifically risky decisions. And I know that our brain is set up in two ways. It's called the dual decision making. One is what we call a hot decision, an emotional decision. Right away, you feel your kind of breath rising, your chest rising, and you make that emotional decision. The other pathway is called a cold decision making, a more rational. We step back, we consider that. And women in the literature, as well as culturally and socially, have been suggested that we're more emotional decision makers. And I wanted to put that to the test in the lab. So I gave a very common philosophical dilemma. It's made its way into, popular media and TV shows. It's called the trolley dilemma. And you can look that up on your own. But essentially, you as the person have to decide who to save and who will get injured.
Oh, I love those.
And I found that women in the lab, and this again is well established in other researchers' labs as well, but they tend to make the more emotional decision. They find it very difficult to have to injure anyone. But what I found were two things that were very interesting. One, women are motivated by a need to protect. So it wasn't coming from an inability to make decision. Rather, it was coming from a very powerful nurturing framework that they wanted to protect as many people as possible. But on the surface, it seemed like they were not able to make a rational decision. But really, it was a very powerful place. But if you are a person that feels like you have to make a rational decision, I also found in my lab that when you stick your hand in a bucket of ice for 1 minute, again, quite a long time when you're, have your hand cold like that, what it does is it flips the switch in your brain. It moves away from your emotional brain, the amygdala, because your emotional brain is focusing on the pain, the discomfort of this ice, and your hand is supposed to be submerged up to your elbow. Ooh. And so as a result, it kind of dials down that emotional decision making and shifts your rational brain, your prefrontal cortex, wide open. And so if you find yourself having to make a decision that you feel very emotional about, should I sell my home? Should I, give up my job and start my own business? Should I move to a different city? And you find that your emotions are maybe kind of coming into the forefront. Maybe stick your hand in that bucket of ice for a minute, and it'll turn down the dial on your emotional brain, allowing your rational brain to step in and make that decision.
Well, I was talking to Eden, since this is an over 50 podcast. I think also as you get older, you do find yourself being able to not be so emotional right away. You can say, okay, I'm going to think about this and get back to it, or I'm going to sleep on it overnight. But I felt like when I was younger, I had to do something in the moment. That's where the ice would have come in really handy for me. But as women age, I think, and I saw this in the book, things change because we do a lot based on hormones. Mm-hmm. And so that was something I also found fascinating.
Yes, and I think when we think of mental health, we do see the female hormones come into play here. We're simply wired with a different set of hormones that make us more susceptible to mental health issues like anxiety and depression. Again, none of this is deterministic, and they are research-based ways that we can kind of circumvent or buffer against that. One of them is yelling stop. And I know Eden and I have joked about this in the past, but there's research to show that simply putting your hand up, so that physical gesture, again, it's almost communicating to your brain like, hey, stop this overthinking pattern. And even yelling it out loud, like stop. And it can kind of give you, like you said, Christine, that way to sleep on it or step out of that circle of overthinking.
And you do mention one of your truths is that women, and this isn't to minimize the fact that there are a lot of men out there who do have anxiety and stress related difficulties, but you do say that women, based on research and based on just pure numbers, tend to be unhappier than men where it comes to the challenges you just discussed. Mm-hmm. And is hormones a part of that?
Yes. So one of the pieces of research shows that norepinephrine is a female hormone. We have more of it, and it's also more linked to anxiety and depression. And so even in research with males, they find they have lower levels. Males with clinical depression tend to have lower levels of testosterone. So they are depressive tendencies that have very strong scientific basis in our neurochemistry. So some men have, different levels of testosterone, which makes them more susceptible to depression. So as you said, it does affect us all. But again, none of it's deterministic. And there's, a growing body of research to show that even things like scientific research, talk therapy, even exercise can make a huge shift in our mental health.
The exercise thing is something I can bang on a drum all day about that. And when I say exercise, I mean going for a walk. Mm-hmm. I'm not talking about anything crazy like that one lady you have in that one chapter about
the Spartans.
Yeah. So you'll have to buy the book to figure out what I'm talking about there. But you know what I mean? Like just getting out and taking a walk, just moving your body. Mm-hmm. Sometimes that is what you need to kind of free up your thinking. And I think for women and men, that's the case.
It is. And there's also research to show that, again, as you said, just a 20-minute, low intense activity makes a huge difference. A scientifically reported significant impact to depressive symptoms. So that's really a wonderful thing to do. The kind of paradox is that when someone is experiencing clinical depression, you have low levels of motivation or anhedonia. You don't want to do anything, essentially. So the trick there is to just tell yourself, you know what, I'll just put on running shoes. I just put on shoes that I can go for a walk in. You don't have to tell yourself you're going to go for a walk, because the minute you do, your brain will create excuses. Oh, it's too cold. I can't do it. I'm too busy. But if you have your shoes on, then you can tell yourself, you know what, I'll just walk to the end of the block. And then pretty soon you'll find yourself walking that full 20 minutes. So really the idea here is to create very, very small achievable goals, starting with just wearing an outfit that you feel comfortable going for a walk in.
Uncluttered and Unfiltered is supported by Hearts for Minds. Looking to cut back on alcohol? Dry July is the perfect opportunity to reduce or entirely remove alcohol and experience improved sleep, lower stress, and a mental health boost. This Dry July, prioritize your well-being with Hearts for Minds Mocktails with Meaning free ebook featuring delicious mocktails from top restaurant mixologists. Discover a world of non-alcoholic options for home, poolside, or dining out. Join the movement. Raise a glass to mental wellness and support Hearts for Minds. Find the Mocktails with Meaning ebook at heartsforminds.org. You know what this sounds to me like also the uncluttering aspect of it. I know, Christine, when you deal with people, they have a sense of stress, a sense of depression, and you start in one area and you finish that area.
Right.
And I feel like that's kind of along the lines of those little things you can do for yourself to jar yourself out of your current state of mind.
Yeah, and I love that you do that, Christine. Again, there's so much research on what's called organizational psychology that shows that a cluttered space tends to affect productivity and even mental health.
So, you hear that, everyone? Well, I have to talk about one other thing, the liar, liar, brain on fire. I loved this chapter too, because I find men and women are different when it comes to this. They are so different. And the myth is women are more honest and lie less than men, which, I mean, that is such a myth. I mean, we all know we're all equal in it. But the truth is women lie for different reasons than men. And I feel that the reason why women, one of the reasons would be because we don't want to hurt someone's feelings. So we're not really lying. We're just twisting the truth.
White lies.
Because we don't want to hurt someone's feelings by telling the whole truth. Where men, I think they're such a different being because they want everything to be factual. So unless you have evidence or facts or something to back up what women are all kind of emotionally bound by what they feel and think. And so I found this fascinating because I do believe women are better liars than men, only because I think we know how to do it so it's not like a blatant out and out lie. I mean, whereas men, if my husband makes this weird facial expression, I'm like, okay, spill it. Just say it.
He's got to tell.
I feel like I have two brothers. I feel the same way about them. I know when they're lying. Like you can tell more when a man is lying, I feel, than a woman.
But do women lie more than men?
No. So there's no research to suggest that the frequency differs. But as Christine mentioned, we do lie for different reasons. And there is research with adult females to show that they will lie what you call to protect someone, or pro-social lies. So they would be more likely to lie to protect someone's feelings than they would to preserve their own sense of self. And what I found was fascinating in my own research is that this is noticed even in children as young as 4. So I worked with pre-K children, and it was a simple game. They just had to throw little paper balls into a basket, and we had an experimenter pretend that they were playing the game, and they failed in the game. And I found that the young girls would be more likely to lie to protect the fact that this researcher was cheating, so that they would get a prize, but not our young boys. The young boys would, just be factual and say, nope, they cheated. They went a little closer than they should have to make that basket.
That's so funny.
I'm telling you, this really made me think. This book, even reading just the truths and the myths, just really had me thinking.
What are some other standouts? This is how we're so different. She has a nice typed up list.
Yeah,
I have dog ears all throughout. But please proceed.
The happy brain.
Yeah, the habits too. I want to talk about some of those habits.
You go ahead.
Okay, so let's talk. I really love when somebody says, I was able to employ something I learned from the podcast. And so there are different things that are habits. And I do love, like you say, just put on your shoes so you could leave the house and go for a walk or something like that. These are the kind of things that are easy enough to do in the moment. So what are some other things, Tracy, that you tell people that they could maybe start just, adding into their daily schedule or start to employ once they get those darker thoughts? What are your feelings there?
I would suggest 2 things. And the first one circles back to the conversation we were having about people pleasing. So in my own research, I found that this idea of agency, you might think of it as control, though that has negative connotations. So the sense that you are making your own decisions is actually a buffer against depressive symptoms. And so to put this into practice, if you feel like they asked me to do this again, I don't want to, I'm exhausted, just take a breath, take a step back and ask yourself, do I want to do this? And this is powerful because it allows you to express your agency. Do I want to do this? If you're saying, yes, I do, even though I know I'll be tired afterwards, that after the outcome doesn't matter because you are making the decision on the front end. So sometimes we make our decisions based on the outcome rather than our agency. So I would ask, the listener to just kind of move back a little bit and look on the front end. Do you want to do this? And it's hard to do that in the moment. I have many clients that'll say in that moment, I just feel flustered. I just say yes, and then I wish I didn't. And now I can't go back and say no. So a good way to practice is just start with simple things. Do I want to have my coffee this morning? Do I want to wear this colored top this morning? Do I want to, just small things like that to almost exercise your brain into that habit of asking yourself your sense of agency. Do I want to do this? That's the first thing. The second thing is a physical gesture again, and it's called bite a pencil. And I know, Eden, you and I have talked about this too. And the reason biting a pencil it tricks your brain into feeling happy. It's based on something researchers call facial feedback hypothesis. So if you bite your pencil long ways, not straight up, but long ways, it forces your mouth into a fake smile. Oh. And your brain registers it as, oh, if my muscles are moving upwards on my face, then I guess I'm smiling. And if I'm smiling, I guess I must be happy. So you're reverse engineering things rather than letting your brain tell your body, hey, you don't feel great today. And then your body starts slouching and, kind of taking on those symptoms. You are reverse engineering it by saying, hey, my body's telling my brain, I do feel happy today.
Well, in the happy brain, it says the truth is women seek emotional and spiritual support more often than men, which can improve their happiness. I find that absolutely true. I think women, they love to explore why they're feeling a certain way and how to change it. Mm-hmm. Whereas men are kind of more routine and, they'll watch the basketball game and that'll just get their mind off of it, where women really want answers.
Yeah. And I think that's important to know too. My only sort of caveat or addition to that would be careful how far down the whys are taking you. Sometimes if the whys are taking you to an unhealthy place, sometimes there's not a reason for why someone said what they said or behaved the way they did or why life just turned out the way. So sometimes just segueing to the what, like what can I do in this situation, again, puts it back to that agency, that locus of control, that you are not helpless. The world is not acting on you or against you. You have some part that you can play.
Love that.
You mentioned something about like people asking you to do things and you're saying, why are they asking me to do all of these things? I'm so busy. And then instead saying, do I want to do this? Is that because it takes you from a place of this is just happening to me versus I am happening to the world? This is what I am out there putting out about myself. Like I'm the one, I want to be the one that gets it done versus everyone expects me to be that person?
Yes, exactly. So psychologists call this idea of learned helplessness. So let's take a very simple example, the rain. We can stop and think, oh, it's raining. Why does it always rain on the days I want to do something? This is a view
I ask that a lot, by the way, especially when it rained on my daughter's wedding, but go ahead.
But on a larger scale, this can lead us down into a path where we feel helpless. It's raining. We can't change the weather or the situation. And so therefore we are helpless. We can't do anything. So asking yourself, what do I want to do, switches the script, and it allows you to say, okay, fine, it's raining. I acknowledge that. I accept that. What can I do? Well, I can wear my raincoat. I can decide it's raining and I don't want to go out. Well, then I'm making that decision. The rain isn't making me make that decision. And that shift in mindset can make a big difference in our mental health in the long term.
Here's what I'm looking forward to. I'm looking forward to a lot of over 50 ladies hugging on their husbands or significant others for 20 seconds or longer.
And letting us know. And letting us know.
While biting a pencil with their hand
in ice.
Deep in ice.
Yeah.
So let's get back to the hugs because I don't think we mentioned how many of these hugs a day you're supposed to do. Wasn't it 12 makes you feel the best? You wrote this down. I know you did.
Of course I did. I mean, we need 4 hugs a day to survive, 8 hugs to keep us where we are, and 12 hugs to grow. Is that a day?
It is a day.
Wow. I might have to start hugging strangers to get to 12 hugs a day.
You can buy a dog.
Well, I have a dog.
So yeah,
I'll just hug
your dog,
Rika. Yeah.
Hug your pillow. Hug a friend. I do love the fact, though, that this validates the fact that my husband, and yes, I get it, this is problematic. I assure you that's my daughter speaking, her wokeness saying problematic. But oftentimes I'll say something and he'll roll his eyes and say chicks. Like this validates both of us in that I then say to him, you're right. I mean, the way you said it, maybe not so much, but you're right. It is the way I process things. It doesn't make it any less real. It's just that in my female brain, this is how I perceive this particular thing happening. And it's real. It's the way I am because of who I am.
I love that you phrase it that way. And I think, again, it's back to this idea of insight, that you don't feel you have to apologize. It's the way we're wired sometimes. Sometimes it's the way we're raised. So in one of the chapters, I talk about praise, that young girls tend to be praised more for their person. Like, oh, you're so awesome. You're so pretty. You're so amazing. And what that does is it changes their sense of identity, their self, because they connect what they do with who they are. That, oh, if I fail on a test, if I don't do well on this game or whatever, I'm a bad person. But boys, there's lots of research to show that young boys are not praised for who they are. They're praised for what they do. Like, man, you were great out there. You played really hard. And you see this shift really play out even in our adult life, where if we don't do a good job on something, we feel negative as a person. Or
a failure. Mm-hmm. I mean, I how could I not have done that to perfection, or, whatever. Men, I did it the best I could.
Yeah.
And that's it.
Yeah. Yes. And I think that's the power, to recognize that we can dissociate between us as a person versus us as a project, what we put out. So, okay, fine, I didn't do so great on that project, but that doesn't make me a failure. And again, it's that insight, knowing that our brain's wired this way or that we were raised a certain way can help us change the script.
The book is called Think Like a Girl, 10 Unique Strengths of a Woman's Brain and How to Make Them Work for You. It's available wherever you purchase your books. Is there a way that's best for the author, for people to get their hands on this?
No, there's an audiobook version, a Kindle version, a hardback version. So whatever way you like to enjoy reading.
Well, it was an easy read. I really, and I'm not a big reader. So for me to read a book and really get into it, that says something.
It's a great book that will arm you in a lot of situations. It's a great book if you have children or grandchildren and you want to be able to make sure that you are doing and saying the things that are best going to help them flourish and be the best they can be.
And I think it's a great thing for relationships. I mean, I learned a lot, and poor Mitch, he's going to be getting a lot of hugs.
He's going to get the little Dickens hugged out of him, and also a book club. I think this would be a terrific book club read. In fact, what we'll do is we'll make sure, obviously, in all of the different places where we have social media opportunities to share, we'll share this, and we would love to see like a thread going or something in our little private community that we have called Uncluttered and Unfiltered Ladies Only. We can get something started there for anybody who wants to read the book and make some comments on what they've heard. And where can people find you?
I have a website, tracypackiam.com. I'm on social media, Dr. Tracy Packiam, and I'd love to connect.
And we'll have all this linked in.
Absolutely.
So you can find her easy.
Love it. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
We really, really appreciate it. Thank you guys for listening. Thank you for always participating in everything we do. And as always, we're going to ask you if you can subscribe so you're always notified for future episodes. If you leave stars, leave 5, please, because that helps us the most. And also what it does too when you leave a review is it lets other women know what they're getting into when they join.
So important.
We love that. And until we meet again, remember, and I know that you'll agree with this, with all things you can let it go.
And don't look back.